When TPS ends, it's more than just a change in status. It is a ripple effect that can hit every corner of our communities. From first responders who rush into disasters to teachers shaping young minds. Thousands could lose their right to work and stay. In this episode, we break down what is at stake and the practical legal options that might still be on the table in case if you act fast.
And then having had already lived with a social, with a driver's license, sort of with work authorization, and then to go to not have it, it's going to be an abrupt change for those in the United States. And we're going to be also losing, basically millions of authorized workers in society. One of the calls I had recently was from a first responder who has TPS, and they want to go to Central Texas to help out with the flood victims and the flooding. They want to go to Florida. There's lots of other places that are having hurricanes and natural disasters, but their work authorization is going to end in less than 2 months. And to think about just that microcosm example of how this is going to impact the rest of our country, where there's going to be people losing their work authorization in very critical jobs like healthcare, first responders, education, construction, everything that's going to have a big impact in our country. So there's been lawsuits. I really don't want to go into all those nitty gritty because reality is this is very dynamic and changing minute to minute. But I think what I really want to cover is more about what your options are. So there could be like family-based petitions. That's one that we generally want to go there first. There could be employment-based ones, but that gets a little bit harder if you have unlawful presence time. And there's asylum, which seems to be a natural transition for a lot of people. There could also be victims of crimes, victims of trafficking, VAWA. And then what are your options if you happen to be put in immigration court? Now, some people with TPS were able to get out of immigration court because of them having TPS. I know that for some clients that had withholding of removal, I was able to get them out of withholding and move them to straight up just TPS. But if they're about to lose their TPS, then they won't have anything else. So these are the concerns we have right now. So let's go to the family-based options. For some of those who've been here for a while, you might have a U.S. citizen child who's 21 or up that they could petition for you. But if you entered illegally or don't meet one of those other exceptions, that doesn't necessarily mean you can adjust status inside the country. You might have to do consular processing, and we have to count to see if you have any unlawful presence time that would trigger a waiver. So everything I'm saying is more of issue spotting and giving you some ideas. It's not necessarily saying this is exactly what you should do. So if you're married to a U.S. citizen, that could be a potential option, especially if you have never been in court or don't have any crimes that would disqualify you or inadmissibilities, and they could do a petition for you. Otherwise, unfortunately, those who entered illegally or without inspection, if they didn't already use the travel permission under their TPS, it might be running too close to the wire if they're about to lose TPS to and come to that legal entry. But that would be ideal if they could do that. So other things about a U.S. citizen parent, if you're a grown-up and you or a legal permanent resident parent and you're not married, all the U.S. citizen sibling petitions, all of those take a really long time. And while those are pending, doesn't necessarily mean you get to stay inside the country. So keep that in mind. When I was mentioning the advanced parole, if you have you eligible to apply for advanced parole, which allows you to travel legally outside the country and come back in. If you have come back in on parole, that can be counted, allow you to adjust status inside the country. But for some people who are just finding out that TPS is ending, then they are heavily concerned that they won't be able to get the advanced parole in time to get it approved, leave, and come back. If you still have probably about 4 to 6 months, you might still be able to pull it off. But you also need to have a valid passport, and you need to act very quickly. Adjustment of status possibilities, like I was mentioning, most cases you need to have a legal entry. If not, you need to have an exception like maybe 245I. That advanced parole can assist you in having that legal entry or parole to adjust. But you also have to evaluate other inadmissibility issues. This would be the ideal if you're eligible to do this right now. Otherwise, you might have to leave to consular process back into the country. When you leave the country, you can trigger more inadmissibilities like unlawful presence. And so this is what a concern, because you would have to have a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident spouse or parent to have the hardship to come back in on your waiver. Employment-based options, they are a possibility. But I do see that I feel like they're a little bit less of a possibility than a family or asylum option for individuals, because we have to calculate how much unlawful presence time did you ever work illegally, and those factors have weigh heavily on whether or not you'd be eligible to go ahead and either consular process or adjust. So this is very fact specific. And when people ask, I really have to know many details to be able to give them an idea of whether this could work or not. So basics of asylum, if you were in TPS and then you know you're about to lose a TPS, you might, and you have a fear of returning, you might be, it'd be good to file, if you are eligible and have a good case, to file before you lose your TPS status while you're still in some type of a status of some sort. That'll help your argument of why it was still timely filed. Things to consider with having suffered past persecution or fear of future persecution on account of one of the 5 protected grounds: race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. So these are things to note. Every case is different. You had someone, they said they don't have a good case, but maybe things have changed in your country. There, in my personal opinion, there are TPSs ending for countries that should still have the issues. Many that originally was given the TPS in the first place. If you go to the State Department website and you look, there's travel advisories of level 4 for most of the countries. They're starting to end the TPS, which in my personal opinion doesn't, because we go to the country conditions and State Department website to show proof of why people still can't return to their home country when we prepare asylum packets. So keep this in mind. The way we prepare asylum is to have the individual write a statement as to why they can't return, and then we develop how it meets the prongs. If a person happens to be in immigration court, there's different forms of relief: asylum, of removal, which is when you've been here 10 years or more, you have good moral character, and have extreme and unusual hardship to a U.S. citizen spouse, parent, or child. This is probably a good option for those who happen to be in court, for those who've been here a really long time. Like, for example, from the Honduras TPS or El Salvador TPS or something like that. If people who've been here more than 10 years before being. And this also is important that you weren't in court before, or unless they might reinstate your prior deportation or your prior court NTA. Adjustment of status for humanitarian visas are also a possibility if you're in immigration court. When the TPS ends, so does the work authorization based off of TPS. If you look at the TPS website, USCIS website under TPS, for example, Honduras, it says specifically the EAD expires on September 8th. So does the extension on the TPS.
So we have gone over how TPS ending could hit essential workers and the legal options still available. In the next episode, we focus on the risk if you overstay after TPS expires, from losing your driver's license to triggering long-term re-entry bars, and why waiting for a lawsuit might be the most dangerous move you can make.